Iran is out of the 2026 World Cup, but the story dominating headlines isn't just about goals and group stage math. It's about visas, border crossings, political threats, and a team that spent the tournament living out of a hotel in Tijuana because they weren't sure they'd be welcome across the border. This is the real story behind Iran's World Cup exit, and it's one of the strangest, most politically charged sagas in tournament history. Let's rewind. When the 2026 World Cup draw placed Iran in the United States, Mexico, and Canada's shared tournament, alarm bells went off almost immediately. The US and Iran have been locked in an active state of conflict, and that tension didn't stay off the pitch. Team Melli's original plan was to base their training camp in Tucson, Arizona. That plan collapsed. FIFA itself suggested Iran relocate, and the team ultimately set up camp across the border in Tijuana, Mexico, flying into the US only on match days and flying straight back out again within hours of the final whistle. Why the extreme precaution? Because Iranian players, coaches, and staff faced real documented immigration roadblocks. 14 members of Iran's staff were denied visas to enter the United States altogether, even though the team's 3 group stage matches were all scheduled on U.S. soil. Iran's own football federation vice president was among those denied entry. Imagine preparing your entire career for a World Cup and then finding out you might not even be legally allowed into the country where your matches are being played. Star forward Mehdi Taremi didn't hold back about how it felt. Having played in 3 previous World Cups, he said the usual sense of global welcome and unity was missing this time, replaced instead by a heavy, uncomfortable tension he attributed directly to the visa denials and the broader climate surrounding Iran's participation. This wasn't a fringe complaint. It echoed across the entire delegation, from players to federation officials, all pointing to the same theme: politics overshadowing sport. And the visa drama wasn't limited to Iran's own team. A Somali referee was also blocked from entering the United States, adding fuel to accusations that immigration enforcement was being applied unevenly and aggressively around this World Cup. Add to that a since-escalated controversy. U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin confirmed that immigration and customs enforcement agents would be present at World Cup stadiums. Mullin didn't rule out the possibility of ICE making arrests at the Games, a statement that directly contradicted earlier assurances from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who had told Miami's host committee that ICE would not be stationed at stadiums during the tournament. That contradiction set off alarm bells far beyond Iran's camp. More than 120 immigrant rights organizations issued a joint travel warning, cautioning fans, players, journalists, and other visitors that they could face serious rights violations traveling to the U.S. for the tournament. Even stadium workers got swept into the controversy. A labor union representing staff at SoFi Stadium voted to authorize a strike over fears that ICE presence could lead to workers or their family members being detained. A last-minute agreement between the union and stadium operators averted the walkout, but it came with a clause explicitly allowing employees to leave their posts if they felt threatened by ICE activity. Through all of this, Iran's players still had to show up and compete. Before their matches even started, the political theater intensified. The Iranian team faced hostility on social media, reportedly including threats traced back to political rhetoric, coming from the very top levels of the U.S. government. Iran's football federation was also dealt another blow when FIFA revoked the block of tickets originally allocated to Iranian supporters, meaning Team Melli would play World Cup matches without the traveling fan support most nations get to count on. FIFA acknowledged the disruptions, but largely stayed on the sidelines, stating publicly that host countries, not FIFA, control visa decisions and border access. So how did the story end on the field? Iran fought through their group stage matches under this cloud of uncertainty, entering the final match day still alive for a spot among the tournament's best third-place teams. It came down to the wire. Iran drew with Egypt, and their fate ultimately hinged on results elsewhere. When Austria scored a dramatic last-gasp equalizer against Algeria, the ripple effect knocked Iran out of contention. After 3 unforgettable, chaotic weeks, Iran's World Cup run was over. But here's where the story takes an unexpectedly emotional turn. While U.S. immigration policy created chaos and hostility for Iran's delegation, the city of Tijuana did the opposite. Mexican fans embraced the Iranian team like family. Supporters gathered outside the team hotel throughout the tournament, holding up handmade signs, some reading messages welcoming the players as honorary Mexicans. Players signed autographs, posed for photos, and connected with local fans in a way that stood in stark contrast to the treatment they described experiencing on the other side of the border. When Iran's players packed up and left Tijuana for the final time, the send-off was emotional. Crowds gathered again to say goodbye. Iran's team management publicly thanked Mexico for its hospitality, and the Iranian embassy in Mexico posted a message expressing gratitude for what it called professionalism, support, and fair coverage of the unfair and unsportsmanlike treatment the delegation said it experienced during its stay in North America. Iran's embassy in Sarajevo echoed similar sentiments, suggesting FIFA should be more careful about which nations it selects to host future tournaments given the humanitarian concerns raised during this one. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the political reaction to Iran's elimination was blunt. Homeland Security Secretary Mullen openly said he was pleased to see Iran knocked out of the tournament, a comment that only reinforced how deeply politics had embedded itself into what should have been a purely sporting storyline. So what does this all mean going forward? Iran's World Cup exit isn't just a footnote in the bracket, it's a case study in how immigration policy, international conflict, and global sport can collide in ways that overshadow the actual competition. Players who trained their whole lives for this moment ended up making headlines for visa denials and diplomatic tension rather than goals and highlight reels, and the warmth shown by everyday people in Tijuana, contrasted against official policy on the other side of the border, became one of the most talked about human stories of the entire tournament. As the World Cup rolls on toward the knockout stage, Iran's saga leaves behind a lingering question that goes far beyond football. When politics and sport collide this directly, who really pays the price? For Iran's players and staff, the answer was clear. Long before a single ball was kicked, the tournament had already become something far bigger than the game itself.